Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Newscast, where I go over the top news of the last week in retro handhelds, retro gaming, and just gaming in general. This is going to be a long newscast, actually the longest since we started, so strap in, get ready, there is a lot to talk about. First up, Suyu is gone, and Sudachi's Discord server was taken down as well. We found out on Wednesday that both Suyu and Sudachi's Discord servers were taken down by Discord for breaking the terms of service. Surprisingly, Ryujinx hasn't been touched yet, but everybody else seems to be getting notices and having issues with Discord and GitHub and everywhere else. But for Suyu, it didn't end there. On Thursday, there was a note from a developer, and we found out that the entire project is now dead. So Suyu as a whole is completely gone, and it looks like most of the developers are going to be working on other projects not related to emulation or Switch emulation. The developer stated that there was issues within the team with some developers, as well as the fact that the code from Yuzu was radioactive, meaning Nintendo's already been watching it, and all sorts of issues arise when code is like that. Now, they probably should have known this before they even started, because it was radioactive when they started. But either way, Suyu is dead as of right now. I don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so. So, see you later. Next up, fellow content creator Retro Dodo released an article this week about how Google is killing independent websites, including Retro Dodo's. It's actually a very well-crafted article. It goes really into depth about how they started, how they built up the team, how the website started, and all of that sort of thing. So it gives you some context into what he's talking about and where they're going with the article. The basic idea is they wanted a website that was made by human experts and provided actual information, as opposed to AI and all of that sort of thing. Their issue is that they state that in September of 2023, Google released a new algorithm that kind of hid or destroyed a lot of independent websites like Retro Dodo. They go into depth about the changes and all of that, and if you wanted to read more, I would suggest checking out the actual article, as it's really interesting. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about this, and for the simple reason that I just released my own actual website not too long ago, and it's completely different than Retro Dodo's, of course, but I'm still kind of an independent website. It is obviously not a big thing, so I'm in the very same space that Retro Dodo would be playing in, and with my website. I'm going to say that from the outside looking in, and I have no skin in this race, and I don't know what changes Google's made or how it affects Retro Dodo specifically. I can only go by the article, but I do know that I don't think that's the entire story, at least not on my part. Now, I didn't come into this community knowing much about Retro Dodo. That was kind of past my time. So I know that a lot of content creators got started watching Retro Dodo as they were kind of the source for information for a lot of retro handheld stuff, but it's not the case anymore. And I think this goes a lot further. If they put a lot of effort into the website, the one weird thing that I have is the community actually doesn't share their website links in any social media that I've found. And that's a big issue. That would contribute to their decline, because if the community is who they're targeting and the community isn't really receptive to what you're putting out, then that's not going to help your growth, especially if that community was the one that helped you grow. So that's how I kind of see it. And again, this is me coming in completely after the fact, but I mean, I think the content probably just needs to be better and more relevant to the community that you're serving. The only real time that I see a Retro Dodo article or video linked is in a bad way. And so that's not good for their growth, obviously, and not good for what they want. So I think it just revolves around maybe just a strategy change in what they're doing and the type of content they're serving. This is by no means an attack on Retro Dodo, none of that at all. I have no hatred for Retro Dodo. I just want to talk about this kind of news. And so I'm kind of just trying to prove the point that you kind of need to put the effort in, especially if YouTube was your first foray into the community. If YouTube is what you're known for, and then you transitioned over into the website, and that's fine if that's what you want to do as the website. But I mean, to give up all of that YouTube growth, to give up everything that you built on YouTube, and to have it fall so far, I think that is the big issue. I think you have to have both cylinders running, both YouTube and the website. So in my mind, I think it's just a strategy issue. I hope that they come out firing on all cylinders, bringing back YouTube, bringing back the website, and maybe just restructuring or making it more focused on the parts that matter to the community, things that we care about. Otherwise, if they're not interested in that, if they're trying to hit a niche that is not this community, then that's a whole different story. But I mean, in my eyes, I think you want to have some sort of connection towards the community that helped make you grow. And so I hope that they can take a look at that. But either way, again, I'm hoping that they make it back into what they used to be. And I'm hoping that we can see some competition with them and their videos and their website and all of that. So kind of cheering in the back of my mind for Retro Dodo here. Hoping the comment section can be respectful if they're going to talk about this. Don't want to see anything completely negative here, as that wasn't my intention. Just want to discuss my thoughts on the article as well as how I think they're perceived. Moving on, and Robert Peep, and I might be saying that wrong, so I do apologize, but he was an FPGA developer for the Mister, and he was currently making an N64 core for the Mister, and it's basically completely done. There are still some games that have a little bit of issues and all of that, but he's going to be moving on into making games instead. I added this story because I just went down a rabbit hole of looking at Mister FPGA devices, and I came across this story because I was curious about N64 development. So it's interesting to see what's happening here, but general idea is he's going to be making games, and it sounds like N64 games for most likely the Mister or other kind of emulators and all of that, and so that should be interesting. For those that aren't familiar with Mister or FPGA, it is basically a hardware-based emulation device. So they take essentially PC parts that were predetermined for the community, and there's now software for it, and you essentially make a little mini PC that can run hardware-based FPGA or hardware-based emulation. Now, the main difference here is it's very similar to an analog pocket. So you'll get low latency, and it's a lot more accurate for emulation compared to something like RetroArch or software-based emulation like we are used to in the retro handhelds community. I would suggest going down the Mister FPGA rabbit hole if you have the time. Very interesting, but just be aware it is also very, very expensive. In Apple news, which is the first time that I'm going to say that on this show, they have emulator support coming to the Apple Store, and I'm going to put an asterisk on that. There is apparently some confusion here. Now, a lot of websites and basically everybody ran with the story that emulators will be possible on the Apple App Store. And we had a few developers come out afterwards, the PPSSPP developer, as well as the Micage, I'm going to say all of these wrong, the 3DS developer. Both of them came out and said, hold on, it might not actually be what we're thinking in that emulators will be allowed on the Apple App Store. It doesn't seem like much has changed, so we'll just have to keep an eye out and see if actual projects get approved on those stores. Now, we did see one example of an emulator getting approved on the Apple App Store, but it was in the EU only, so I'm not sure if it's going to be global, and I think that's going to be the big hang-up as well. So we'll have to keep an eye out and see what happens here. Personally, this doesn't really affect me. I don't have any Apple devices, but it'll be awesome to see a lot more people get involved with emulation, especially because of the untapped market for iOS. And I know there's an alternate app store and you can go that route, but having it on the actual store is a complete big difference and will help grow this community. I look forward to the new comments on my videos asking if this setup guide works on iOS. Jumping over into device news now, and the Odin 2 just got an update. It's not a big update, but there are quite a few lines here, and the big news is that it fixes Call of Duty Warzone, which is good for the people that want that, as well as it fixes some issues that were with the Emulation Station front end, which I had no idea there was actual issues with it, but good to see. And there's also a fix for Wi-Fi 7 routers. And I'm not sure if that fixes the streaming issues. I've had varied reports that there's some issues with streaming on some people's devices. I haven't had that issue on mine. Mine seems to be pretty perfect when it comes to streaming, but seems like there is something for some people out there. Either way, great update, good work in, and I love to see this continued support. Some quick news here on the status of Onion OS for the Miyu A30. The entire Onion team is waiting to get their devices in hand. There seems to be a few that have already, but the general idea is they're waiting for the entire team to get their devices before they decide what to do when it comes to Onion OS for the A30. Now, it's not just as easy as porting it over. There is a lot of work that needs to be done, and they go over it a little bit in this little message. But the general idea is it could be a little bit of time until we see Onion OS on this device. So just keep that in mind if it's part of your buying plans and Onion OS is a must for you, then it might not have it at launch or anywhere close to launch. Another week, another Anbernic handheld. Seriously, I don't know what's going on with them in the last 6 months, but they just don't stop. There is handheld after handheld after handheld that's coming from Anbernic, and it's kind of getting to be a little bit too much. But this week's handheld is the Anbernic RG28XX. Surprisingly, this isn't actually a small handheld. It is as big as the 35XX from what I could tell, but it has no sticks, and it's just a D-pad and some buttons. There's also no Wi-Fi and no Bluetooth. It has the H700 processor, that's the same in the RG35XX Plus and H, and there's a 640 by 480 screen. Okay, look, this is, to me, the same scenario again as the RG35XX 2024, or whatever they want to call it, that just came out, the new 35XX 2024. You basically just strip down the 35XX in every single way, no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, smaller screen, and all of that. And I'm going to guess when the pricing is released, it is not going to be that much cheaper than the 35XXH, especially when we've seen it on sale and all of that for pretty cheap pricing. It's a very confusing decision. Now, the obvious point here is they're trying to compete with the Miyu A30 that is about to come out. But the A30 kind of just blows it out of the water in my mind. It has Wi-Fi, has a better D-pad, it has a stick, it has better buttons, and if Onion OS matters to you, it's going to have Onion OS most likely at some point. I don't want to ruin anybody's parade that's excited for this, so if you are, just continue your excitement. But I think from a general perspective, looking at the number of devices that we have out there, and trying to see where this fits in, I just don't really see it. But we'll have to see when it releases if it changes my mind. Anyways, no pricing or release date yet. I'm sure we'll find out more in the next 2 weeks. And probably in the third week, there'll be an RG28XX Plus. It's the end of an era because both the Wii U and 3DS servers and online servers have shut down, and they're no longer available from Nintendo directly. Now, I haven't looked into this a lot, but it seems like Pretendo, which is aiming to replace this, is already up and running for the people that want it. So already a fix out there, apparently, if you're looking for it. I think the funniest thing about all of this is I saw a bunch of articles come out that the Wii U was an underrated gem and all of this sort of thing that usually comes up when something dies or is dead or is being taken down, that sort of thing. And no, no, I had a Wii U. I loved the Wii U, but it was correctly rated where it was. It sold where it should have. It was not a great device or a great console, despite the fact that it did have some good games, but I mean, it wasn't underrated. It was correctly rated. Now, the 3DS is a top tier device. That is probably going to go down as one of the best handhelds ever made. And for me, it definitely is one of those. And it's still relevant to this day because of the lack of dual screen options that we have for emulation. The 3DS is still the best way to play DS and 3DS games. Last on the device news here, and we got some news on the Lenovo Legion Go 2 from Lenovo themselves. Basically, the general idea is they see a lot of potential in the market and for the Go, and so they are working on a Go 2 with no actual release date in mind, but the general idea is they're going to be adding a lot more features and a lot more things. So either way, this is kind of just confirmation that the Go 2 will be coming at some point, just probably in a little bit. We know that the Ally 2 is likely coming this year, and the Go 2 could as well, maybe near the end, but I'm having to think about it a little bit more. Probably going to be very early of 2025 if I had to guess. If my videos have been helping you, consider supporting me on Patreon or just give this video a like and a sub. Either one helps my channel grow. Jumping into game news now, and we have a few. but we're going to start with Slay the Spire 2, and it's going to be coming into early access in 2025. They did a reveal trailer, and it doesn't show a lot, unless maybe you're into the lore of Slay the Spire and you can pick out hidden things there. But general idea, 2025, it's going to be coming. Slay the Spire 1 is excellent, and if you haven't played it, I would suggest it. You have a long time until 2025, so just jump right in. For a game that's going to be releasing a lot sooner, the Dead Cells devs are releasing a game called The Rogue Prince of Persia. Yeah, the Dead Cells devs. And I'm here for this day one. They are awesome developers, and it's awesome to see a game like this, especially if you watch the trailer. The art style looks really cool. But either way, it's going to be releasing into Steam Early Access on May 14th, so pretty quickly. Rounding out the triple threat of indies here, and Vampire Survivors is coming to PS4 and PS5, and there's going to be a new Contra DLC as well. Now, PS4 and PS5 will be getting it in the summer, and the Contra DLC is going to be releasing on other platforms on May 9th. So, if you've been interested in Vampire Survivors and you haven't bought it yet for whatever reason, I would suggest buying it now. It seems to be on sale. But also, more DLC for Vampire Survivors is awesome. I love that game. In news that probably only matters to me, World of Warcraft Cataclysm Classic is coming on May 20th. Now, the pre-patch is going to start on April 30th, and then a month later will be the actual launch date. And then for future updates and raid releases, Rise of the Zandalari will be July of 2024, Rage of the Firelands is going to be October of 2024, and Hour of Twilight is going to be January of 2025. I think the interesting thing here is how quick those releases are compared to previous classic expansion releases. They seem to be getting everything out of the way in like 9 months or so, which is really fast for how World of Warcraft has worked for classic expansions. Now, I didn't like Cataclysm either, so I can see why they might want to rush through it, but I mean, give it a chance at least. Give it a little bit more time. For those that don't know, I've been playing World of Warcraft on and off since Burning Crusade. So that's about 14 years or so now, off and on. I don't play completely, but every expansion I'll jump in, I'll play for a few months here and there. I go in and out. To me, there is no other game like World of Warcraft. It is probably one of my top games of all time. And it's awesome that the subscriber base is still growing in that game. It is cool to see, it is a great game, and I love to see that it's still going. Continuing our news of the Wii U shutdown, Mario Maker was included in that as well. And part of that, the community went ahead and tried to beat every single uploaded Mario Maker level. And they succeeded. Now, there was one level left, down to the minutes, basically, and it was uploaded using a TAS, basically a tool-assisted speedrunning program, and it essentially helps speedrunners go with fast and precise inputs to beat a level. And so it wasn't really expected that anybody could beat this, because it was basically like a computer did it, and then humans win out, because they did. This awesome dude, Sanix91SMM2, was able to beat the level, and if you haven't seen the insanity of some Mario Maker levels, I would suggest you keep an eye out and look at some videos. Even this one just looks absolutely crazy. I don't know how people do this, but it's awesome that they were able to complete all the levels, and big props to this guy for doing it. Last on the game news, and saving the best for last, Balatro has a 1.0.1 update coming in the next few weeks. I'm not going to go over all of it. There is a lot here. The general idea is they're making it a little bit easier because it can get quite difficult in the later difficulty stages, and it's kind of a big redesign of the game and the different strategies that you need to beat it. Personally, I'm still having a blast. I just finished all of the colored decks, and now I'm working on the higher difficulties to try and beat that. So I'm moving quite along, but it is a very difficult game. So I would welcome any sort of difficulty removal, making it a little bit easier. That would definitely be great. If you haven't played Balatro yet, I'm not sure what you're even doing. Why are you even watching this? Just go and play Balatro. By the way, did I miss a topic that you want to hear discussed? Top comment with the words newscast topic will be featured on next week's show. That's all from me, Budapest.